I'd like to welcome everybody to the ICTF JPA meeting. What's the date? November 29th. Can figure out what day today is. I'd like a roll call first.
Here.
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 Okay. I think Miss Misakowski is maybe on her way here, but we're not too sure. But we have a quorum, so we'll get started with the meeting. First thing I'd like to do is talk about persons in the audience may address this board in connection with any agenda item or during the public comment period. As provided by the Brown Act, the board has limited each individual speaking time to 3 minutes. Anyone desiring to speak during the public comment period is requested to complete a speaker card and submit it to the secretary prior to the start of the meeting or anytime you want to do it. Okay, you have them? Okay. So what I'd like to do first of all is ask if there are comments from the public on non-agenda items. Non-agenda items. Okay, seeing none, I'd like to move approval of the minutes. Do we have a motion?
I'll move.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor of approval of the minutes? Say aye.
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 Aye. Motion passed unanimously. Thank you. Okay, our next item is election of officers. It's in here somewhere.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a nomination to nominate Board Member Schrammick as for chair.
Thank you.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Anybody in the audience wish to comment on this item? Hopefully not. Okay, I have a motion and a second. All in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, I'd like to, is there a nomination for Vice President?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a nomination of Cindy Misakowski as vice chair for the next year.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Okay, I have a motion and a second. Anybody in the audience wish to comment? Seeing none, I have a motion and a second. All in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Thank you. Okay, our last, let's see. Okay, we're down to the first item. Mr. Thiessen. Is that where we are?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can you hear me okay? Is this microphone working? Okay. Thank you. Item number one on the agenda is a report on the financial audit for the fiscal year ending June 30th. This item is a receive and file audit report. The JPA has hired KPMG as our auditor, and they completed the financial audit for the fiscal year ending June 30th, 2010. The audit determined that for the fiscal year, the financial position, changes in financial position and cash flows are presented fairly. Operating revenues for the fiscal year decreased 22.2% to $4,593,000. Net assets decreased 15.6% to $18.7 million. This is due in part to the railroad's increased use of on-dock rail in the harbor district, diminishing the amount of cargo moved through the ICTF. Also, in the period reported, again, this is reported through June 30th, 2010. As you know, there was a large financial decrease in global economic activity, which reduced in the consequent amount of decrease in container activity in the harbor district and at the ICTF. Container volumes decreased in this period of time, and additionally the volume of containers through the ICTF gates decreased 22.8% to an amount of 400,866 containers. It's recommended that the governing board receive and file the financial audit by KPMG for the fiscal year ending June 30th, 2010, and I'm also recommending that board make the additional finding that the activity in this report is administrative and will not result in direct or indirect physical changes to the environment, and as such is not a project as defined by CEQA guidelines section 15378.
Okay, any comments by commissioners, questions?
Mr. Russell, does that require two votes then by the board, or can we make it in receive and file and make the finding in one motion?
You can make it in one motion. It will require 3 votes, 3 members to vote in favor of it.
Okay.
I make a motion to receive and file and make the finding according to staff report.
Okay, is there a second?
Second. Well, you said second. I thought you were second.
Oh, okay. I guess I can.
Yeah, the
Okay.
chair can second, I think.
Okay. Anybody in the audience wish to comment on this item, our audit? Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Motion passed unanimously. Thank you. Okay, the next item is item number 2, which is the net facility revenue report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is also a receive and file report. Again, KPMG has completed the review of the ICTF net revenue for the year ending November 1st, 2010. And this contrasts with the financial audit, which has a different fiscal year. During the year, there were 414,499 gross container moves, generating $12,434,970 in gross revenue. This is an approximate 6.8% decrease over the previous year, 2009. Gate fees collected at the ICTF less the allowable deductions resulted in a net facilities revenue generation of $7,633,145. As prescribed in the JPA agreement, these revenues are to be shared equally by the authority and the Union Pacific Railroad. On November 2nd, 2010, Union Pacific transferred $3,816,573 to the ICTF investment account, and this represents again the 50% net revenue share to the JPA. There is attached to your report a copy of the net facilities revenue, and staff is recommending that the governing board receive and file the draft net facilities revenue report for the year ending November 1st, 2010. Also, staff is recommending the board make a finding that this activity is administrative and will not result in direct or indirect physical changes to the environment, and as such is not a project as defined by CEQA guidelines section 15378.
I'll move we receive and file the net facility revenue report and make the findings consistent with the staff report.
A second.
Okay, we have motion and second. Anybody in the audience wish to comment on this item? See none. I have motion and second. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passed unanimously. Thank you. Okay, Mr. Thiessen, number 4, our budget.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Prior to reporting on item number 4, I'd like to have the minutes reflect that Vice Chair Cindy Mizakowski has arrived.
I'd like to also welcome her.
Four-member panel now. Okay, item number 4 is...
3.
I'm sorry.
We're on 3.
Item 3.
Thank you.
You're jumping on us. Can't do anything without a budget.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Item number 3 is a recommendation to adopt a budget for fiscal 2011-2012. The recommended budget amount is $4,030,000, 457, and it is attached to your staff report. There are 2 large categories in the proposed budget for 2011-2012. The first is $1,900,000, and this is an amount that's carried over from the previous year, essentially associated with the potential capital improvements on Sepulveda Boulevard with the city of Carson. In addition to that, there is an amount of $1,999,000 approximately for legal and consulting services associated with the preparation of the EIR for the proposed modernization of the ICTF. Those are the two largest categories. The other categories in the proposed budget are reflected on there. They're relatively small. I would like to comment briefly on the actual budget that was expended in the previous fiscal year, 2010-2011, in contrast to the adopted budget. There was an adopted budget of $4.6 million. The actual expenditures are looking to be just over $700,000. The primary reason for the lower than expected expenditures is due to two things. One, the City of Carson has not completed environmental reviews for the improvements on Sepulveda Boulevard, and also the adopted budget for the EIR preparation for the modernization project has underspent significantly the approximately $1.7 million amount for that category. Therefore, we're pushing those two items over into the proposed budget for 2011, requesting an amount of, again, $4,030,457. We're also recommending the board make the following finding: that this activity is administrative and will not result in direct or indirect physical changes to the environment, and as such is not a project defined by CEQA guidelines sections 15378. And one other thing, we have members of the both ports financial staff available if there are questions about the proposed budget.
Okay.
I had one question, and that is the EIR preparation as compared to the coming fiscal year versus the previous is $500,000 less. Is that because that much was spent in last year's budget, not the entirety of what was budgeted, but at least that amount?
Yes, exactly. We're not proposing that there be any large increase. The funding expended, estimated actuals for 2010-11 is just under $500,000. If you would add that to the proposed $1.2 million for this coming proposed year, it would reach approximately $1.7 million.
And I guess the other question I would have is why the project management is reduced by, it was coming in at about half the amount. Is that indicating that a significant part of the project management has been spent and utilized? And I find that a little odd that the project management has gone down by half and the EIR preparation has gone down by just very little bit, meaning that we had project managers managing a very small portion of the EIR.
Yeah, the port staff have picked up a considerable amount of that project management. These costs were primarily for outside consulting staff. We are recommending on one of the later board items to extend existing project management services. So we predict we will need them for the following year, but again, we underspent that category.
Thank you.
Okay. Yes, Geraldine.
How many years have we been carrying the $1.9 million for the City of Carson capital improvements, and are they actually going forward with the project? Is there an environmental documenting process, and have they got the rest of the money?
I'm going to have to plead a little ignorance on this. This predates me. I understand the project has been delayed pending environmental action. Do you know anything about it?
Well, I've been on this board for 14 years, and it's been carried over each and every year. I think our advice in the past has been that the City of Carson has not taken it off their books. They still plan to do it, but they just either haven't gotten around to it or don't have the matching money to go ahead and commit to it. So I think the previous advice was to keep on carrying it on the budget
Okay.
in case they come back and say, okay, we're ready now.
Okay, but our amount is set. It doesn't escalate by cost of living or whatever, so.
Correct.
Yeah, correct.
We're capped at $1.9 million.
The original agreements did obligate that dollar amount, and it is capped.
It may be premature, but were Carson to indicate that it was an improvement that they would not be carrying forward, what would we do with the commitment of that money?
It would, we'd go back through the agreements and confirm that those funds could be released and put back into the general ICTF account.
And could we request perhaps of staff, I think you said earlier that one of the reasons it's being carried over is because the City of Carson is still going through the environmental processes themselves and creating their documentation. Could we get a memo to that, to what the real status is from the City of Carson, and are they following through with environmental document preparation or not?
Okay, very good. We'll get a update from the City of Carson and get that memo to the board.
Good. Any other questions? Okay, can I have a motion?
I will move.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the budget. Anybody in the audience wish to comment on this item? Seeing none, have a motion and a second. All in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passed unanimously. Thank you. Item number 4, distribution of funds.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. There has been a tradition every year upon approval of the budget to look at potential net revenue distributions from the ICTF to the joint ventures. The net revenue distribution from the tenant ending in November 2010 was the amount of $3.8 million. The present cash balance of the JPA before any distribution to the partners is $6.4 million. This exceeds the anticipated needs for the fiscal year 2011-2012. Again, the City of Carson required the JPA contribute to potential improvements, including work on Sepulveda Boulevard. This amount, again, is $1.9 million. And a distribution of $6 million from the JPA account to both ports would leave a balance after all potential expenditures of $2.6 million, which would be carried over into fiscal 2011-2012, which is determined to be appropriate in light of potential cash flow needs. Therefore, it is recommended that the governing board authorize distributions in the amount of $3 million each to the two ports, the Port of Long Beach and Port of Los Angeles. We're also recommending the board make a finding that this activity is administrative and will not result in direct or indirect physical changes to the environment. As such, is not a project as defined by CEQA guidelines 15378.
Thank you, Mr. Thiessen. Any questions by board members? Okay, seeing none. Anybody in the audience wish to comment on this? Seeing none, can I have a motion, please?
Motion.
Okay.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you. Okay, now the Southern California Edison license agreement.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. With the development of the Southern California, the Joint Powers Authority, ICTF, there was construction of a sound wall south of Arlington Street on the perimeter of the Southern California Edison property. There is a license agreement with Southern California Edison that expired in October of 2010. Unfortunately, we received this expiration notice just after we had the last ICTF Joint Powers meeting, and so Southern California Edison has been very patient, requesting that this license be executed and returned to them. The 5-year Payment is in the amount of $2,300. We're recommending the governing board approve this license agreement with Southern California Edison on this existing sound wall, and also make a finding that this activity is licensing of an existing sound wall involving no change to the structure, expansion of an existing use, and as such is exempt under CEQA guidelines sections 15301.
Okay, thank you. Questions by board members?
What is the expected life of the sound wall? And why would we only be doing a 5-year license agreement if it's a sound wall that like we're all used to?
Well, I can only assume a sound wall probably lasts 50 years or more. I would have to check back with this agreement goes back to the 1980s and the inception of the ICTF, and I can find out and
Yeah, I'm just
report
curious
back.
why we only do a 5-year licensing for it. I mean, unless there's some expectation that something's going to be widened or constructed in the interim, we might want to cause it to be taken down. But I can't conceive of any other reason why it would be only a 5-year.
Perhaps they wanted to reserve their rights to increase the license cost every 5 years, but we can find that out.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, other questions? Okay, could I have a motion?
So moved.
Okay, we have a motion, I'll second it. Anybody in the audience wish to comment on this item? Seeing none, we have a motion and a second. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Thank you. Okay, Mr. Thiessen and, I don't know, Mr. Russell maybe will help out as we're getting into the EIR preparation now with the next items, and there will be a number of speakers. When would you recommend that we have the people speak on these items?
Mr. Chair, we have received at least 2 comment cards that have asked to speak on item number 6. I assume there may be others in the audience that may want to speak on item number 10. Looks like we have a couple more. One speaker wishes to speak on items 7 and 10, and another on item number 6. So we have a couple ways we could handle this. I would recommend that as each item comes forward, we have the speakers speak on that specific agenda item. I also would like to make an announcement about tonight's meeting that may be useful to some of the members of the community. This probably would be a good time to do that. Or I could do that at the end of the agenda. Okay. The announcement is that we will be hearing comments from the public on non-agenda items within the purview of the ICTF JPA. Many of you are aware that the Port of Los Angeles has publicly released an EIR for another project, the proposed project by the Burlington Northern Santa Fe Railroad called the Southern California International Gateway, or SCIG project. The SCIG project is not within the purview of the ICTF Joint Powers Authority, and therefore public comments about the SCIG project should not be made here tonight. Any comments on the SCIG EIR that are made here will not be reviewed by the Port of Los Angeles as a lead agency or recorded as public comments in the official EIR comment file. Please see the Port of Los Angeles website at www.portoflosangeles.org for more information on how to provide public comments on the SCIG EIR directly or directly to the Port of LA. Yeah, I'll wait. So I just wanted to make that announcement in case there was some confusion by potential speakers on the SCIG project. Tonight's meeting is on the ICTF Joint Powers Authority. We will have a project report on, that's item number 10 on your agenda, on the preparation of the EIR for the ICTF modernization. Okay. Under Vice of Counsel, I'm going to also read that this is not a CEQA hearing for the ICTF modernization project. Rather, this meeting covers the progress and status of the preparation of the EIR. The ICTF EIR is still being prepared, and there will be a time for comments on the ICTF EIR after it is released for public review. And staff will be reporting on the schedule for that. The proposed project details will not be discussed tonight or approved at this meeting.
Okay, thank you. I think that's a good comment, is people need to understand that, is that this is not about the project approval tonight. There's nothing to do with that. It is about going forward with the EIR, the preparation of the EIR, and the contracting of that. So just to let people know as we get to these items. Okay, go ahead with item number 6 then. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. Item number 6 is a ratification of a withdrawal of an agreement between the Joint Powers Authority and AQMD for preparation of the EIR for the modernization project. In 2008, the Joint Powers Authority entered into an MOA with the South Coast Air Quality Management District, otherwise known as AQMD, for EIR preparation. A copy of that MOA is attached to your board packet. Withdrawal upon notice is contemplated in the agreement. The AQMD staff and the JPA staff have mutually agreed it is in their best respective interest to withdraw from the MOA, and we have done so. A copy is attached to your board packet there. It's recommended that the governing board ratify the withdrawal of the ICTF JPA from the MOA for EIR preparation as provided in the attached letter. We're also recommending that the board make a finding that this activity is administrative and it will not result in a direct or indirect physical changes to the environment, and as such, it is not a project. It is defined by CEQA guidelines sections 15378. And I would like to say there are a number of speakers who have indicated they would like to speak on agenda item 6.
Okay, thank you. Can I have a motion on this so we have something to speak about?
Motion.
Is there
Second.
Second? Okay, motion second. Commissioner or board members have comments, questions?
I think it's probably important in the context of voting on this that at least staff talks a little bit about some of the subsequent items that are on the agenda, so that there's a broader understanding of what takes place next for those people who may have not seen the whole agenda, that there's a future action to be taken. And Doug, you might just want to, or Tom or one of the board staff explain a little bit of the background for the benefit of the audience here.
Okay, I'll attempt to describe this in a brief detail. I may request that either Rick Cameron or Chris Cannon, staff to the JPA, who've been working with the South Coast, describe this a little bit further. As described in the staff report, there was an agreement entered into with AQMD to perform environmental report documentation preparation. That activity has continued for a number of years. A lot of the work product has been completed or is in the final stage, and some needs to be finalized, and there's a lot of work that's been underway and very successful. We, however, have reached a point where we both agree that it would be useful to separate that agreement mutually beneficial, and have another consultant step in and perform that work. And that's actually item number 7 on the agenda that follows this. And to elaborate on this a little further, I would request that either Mr. Cannon or Cameron speak to this.
Hello. Okay. I don't really have much to add. It was a decision that was made mutually between the AQMD and the ports that the AQMD would step down and that the ports would have one of the, or excuse me, the JPA, forgive me, would have one of the consultants step in and really complete the process. The majority of the technical work has been done. There's some final work being done in the air quality section and on health risk and noise, but really the final task that's left is the putting together of the document, and that's something that we mutually agreed was could be handled by one of the technical consultants that's set up to do that.
Good.
Mr. Chairman,
yeah.
I noticed the actual agreement says dissolution of this agreement by November 15th, 2022. There's a typo there.
Okay, we will, I see that also. There, obviously, we made a mistake. We'll correct that. We did receive a handful of speaker requests on this item. I would recommend we hear those comments prior to the board making a vote on this.
Okay, so this is just the item where we're going to approve the withdrawal of AQMD for preparing the EIR. So I'd like to go ahead. You want to call the
Yes,
speakers?
we received 3 speaker requests. The first is James Johnson from the city of Long Beach. Following Mr. Johnson is John Cross, and following Mr. Cross is Angelo Logan.
Okay, I'd like to welcome James. Let me just welcome James Johnson, who is city councilman in the city of Long Beach.
Well, thank you, Chair, and congratulations to your appointment. Certainly a great day for the city of Long Beach. And welcome all to the beautiful 7th District into West Long Beach. I'll keep most of my comments for item number 10, but I did just want to comment, without really knowing much about why this change is being made or the details, I would just hope and note that I hope this does not signify any lessening of a commitment to a strong environmental document or to strong mitigations, particularly zero emissions, that I hope to see in the document. So I'll continue, I'll hold notice of my comments for number 10, but I do look forward to whoever the new consultant is, and I hope we have a robust document that really covers the subject thoroughly and particularly has the mitigations that I think are required to move forward. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, my name is John Cross. I'm a resident of West Long Beach, representing the West Long Beach Neighborhood Association, currently vice president. As a gentleman alluded to, there's an EIR out now. I'm not going to discuss it. It's got plenty of holes in it. So since the AQMD is no longer going to be pursuing the EIR on this, I hope staff on both ports work with a new group that's going to handle the EIR when it gets approved, and they keep what some of the AQMD put into the report, since most of it's done. I don't want to see the EIR doctored and more in favor of the port if the AQMD says different. I know they're going to lock heads on there, but they need to keep these EIRs, when the new group takes over, all the input from both groups and stay as neutral as possible. And don't sway it one way or the other so it's in your favor or against it, but it's got to be outright honest and upstanding, because they've been working on this for a year or so now, and it needs to be fair, and whatever the AQMD needs to put in there needs to be followed up with a new group and look at both sides and come out with an equal and balanced EIR for everybody. Like I said, the one prior that came out for the Port of LA, it's got so many holes in it, it's got more holes in it than a sieve. So please do it right. I'm asking Mr. Cannon and Mr. Cameron over there to make sure all the information gets in the EIR and it's done right.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next.
Our last speaker is on item number 6 is Angelo Logan.
Thank you. Angelo Logan with the East Yard Communities for Environmental Justice. So I wanted to comment both on 6 and 7. They're kind of interrelated. I really believe that the public should be made more aware of the background in terms of the severance of this agreement between the JPA and the AQMD. The statement that it was a mutual agreement kind of doesn't really speak to the reason or rationale for that severance of this agreement or this contract. I believe the public deserves to know more why this is happening. I think one of the reasons the AQMD was selected as the contractor, I guess, to do the EIR was that there is community trust and belief that this will be an accurate analysis of this particular project. And so I believe that there needs to be more of a discussion so that the public can be made more aware of the reason, rationale, and that we can give some really meaningful feedback and comments to the board. Along the same lines, I believe that going into an agreement with Environ needs more of a community process or more of a process in which people can give more feedback. Going back to the reason that AQMD was selected as a contractor to do the EIRs, that there was community trust. With the SCIG EIR and Environ's participation in that, with all due respect, there is a lack of trust with Environ and the work that they've done on the SCIG EIR. And so I just want to urge you to kind of step back to reassess how to move forward with the consultant or contractor on this EIR so that you have full faith from the community that this is going to be an accurate, robust, and thorough analysis. So I would recommend to the JPA that you think about how to make this more inclusive, more of a public process, and also, in closing, I tried to download the agenda packet from the website, and really all there is available is a 3-page document, which is the agenda that's here today. So we don't have any of the background information on any of these agenda items.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Just real quickly, do we know anything about the webpage? Because that surprised me.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I believe all the items, including the attachments, should have been posted to the website.
Well, could we just have someone double check?
Yeah,
that?
we'll have someone double check.
Make sure it gets on there, and we apologize if you can get it off there.
This particular item just has a 2-page attachment of the withdrawal agreement between the JPA and AQMD.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments on item number 6?
Well, was there a response to the any additional background information as to what led to the discussions relative to the mutual agreement as requested, and what are we able to provide in answering that?
Well, there's a number of reasons. Well, first of all, the consultants, the item following this, item number 7 with Environ and all of the subcontractors, and I know we're not voting on that item right now, but they were all working for AQMD on this JPA modernization project. There was a workload issue with, and I won't speak for AQMD, but I can just speak for the port staff, and perhaps Mr. Cameron or Cannon can elaborate on this. So there was an understanding that if both parties withdrew from that agreement, all the consultants working for the AQMD stepped over here and worked under Environ's umbrella, we could expedite and complete the draft EIR. This project has been a couple years in the making, and it's been dragging out. We want to get a draft environmental document out to the public to start getting comments. There's been a lot of questions about the project. I don't know if you guys want to elaborate on that.
Just to understand, so that basically, because there was some concern that when we do get to the next item and look at Environ as an entity who would step in to do this, essentially what you've said is Environ has already been in or under a contractual relationship through AQMD to be doing some of the work that has already been done. So it's not a substitute of somebody new. No. It is a continuation of an existing contractor working both with the ports and with AQMD.
Not quite.
Not quite? Okay, well.
A little clarification.
Madam Chair, board members, maybe I think the speakers have raised some good points here. I think maybe for a point of clarification. the adequacy of this document does not lie with the consultants or the sub-consultants. They're there as technical support in preparation of these documents. The adequacy lies with staff of the JPA, and ultimately, as we go through this process, the JPA board, and what ends up concluding as part of a final environmental document. I think in terms of the mutual agreement to kind of separate up and go on our different ways was truly that. AQMD is not here, I don't believe, and in all fairness.
Is there, I think a hand was raised, AQMD.
Susan's here. I mean, you know, in all fairness to AQMD, I don't want to speak for them. I think we reached a point in the development of the admin draft EIR. I would say 90% of the technical documents and the sections of the admin draft have been completed with AQMD's oversight as being the prime consultant to this point. You know, we felt there was some difference of opinions as we move forward. AQMD has a traditional role. There was some prioritization amongst what AQMD was working on and where we wanted to get this project up and completed and get this document out on the street. So in all fairness to AQMD, I don't know if you want to say anything, Susan? No?
Let me just clarify one thing. The Environ was not working under contract to AQMD. Environ was working under contract to the JPA. They were already serving as the administrative project manager for this project. And they were doing so for Lisa Oceaner, who is on maternity leave. So they took over her job, her role as coordinating the project, coordinating meetings, managing the schedule, and coordinating the receipt of information from AQMD and others. And so they were already currently playing that role for this project, but they were working for the JPA, not for the AQMD. What was occurring, or what did occur, is there are a number of technical consultants who were working for the AQMD to prepare the various sections of the document, most notably traffic, noise, air. There was an overall quality assurance person who was sort of managing the development of the writing. All of those consultants would continue to serve in those exact same roles going forward. What will change is that Environ would take over the job as the overall consultant project manager. And so the difference is that in addition to what they were doing before, now they'll be actually receiving the various technical analyses, assembling the documents, doing QA to make sure that those things are, the I's are dotted, the T's are crossed, receiving the edits and the recommended changes from staff, as Rick described, that it is our job to determine what the content is, and then turning those around. They'll also receive the comments from the lawyers and so forth, and then to turn that around and finally putting the document out on the street. And there's no bad feelings toward AQMD. In fact, there's good feelings toward AQMD here in this room from us. We have great respect for their work, and for in particular Susan Nakamura, who I believe is here. Nothing bad to be said about her. She's an excellent professional. The only reason we decided to do this is that we reached a point, and as Rick described, that most of the technical work was done, and it was time to get into that last sprint that we all know from doing this work you get, where you got to put the doggone thing together. And it hurts, it's painful, and we've got a consultant that's actually set up to do that. And we determined, and it was a mutual decision, that at that point in the process, we would have AQMD step aside, and Environ would pick up that role. In other words, expand their job as administrative manager to sort of handle the overall consultant technical management.
Whose choice was this?
It was a mutual decision.
Thank you for that additional information and clarification, particularly with the relationship of Environ, who has been on it. And I believe and understand that the AQMD in no way steps away from their regulatory function as a commentator ultimately on the draft in that role. So they aren't going to disappear entirely from this process. I'm sure we will hear from them once the draft is out in their role as the AQMD as we know it for this region.
No, that's a great point. They're a responsible agency for this document, and as a responsible agency, they will be commenting. And they also, I must say that even as the transition has occurred, they have taken it upon themselves to provide us a checklist of things they felt needed to be addressed as we went forward, just to make sure that things that were, loose ends were handled. And these are things that they did really on their own time after the 15th when the transition was technically occurring. And so we want to thank them for that effort even now.
I think it's worthwhile, members, to point out that the agreement with the AQMD to mutually withdraw specifically reserves their right to take any positions on the project. This is in paragraph 11. It's provided for. And that includes participating in litigation regarding any aspect of the project. So they are not relinquishing any regulatory role at all here. They intend to fully exercise their authority.
Thank you.
Okay, other questions, board members? Okay, we have, do we do a motion?
We did a motion, so the question is called.
Been a while. Okay, we have a motion second on item number 6. All in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Thank you. Okay, item number 7, which is Environ.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm going to try to summarize this a little bit. We've already had some discussion about the proposed Environ contract. As described in the previous item number 6, both the AQMD and the JPA have mutually agreed to withdraw from the MOA in the preparation of the EIR. Therefore, it is a need to have a qualified firm to complete the final preparation of the draft EIR as Mr. Cannon so eloquently described. Environ has been supporting the preparation of the EIR as a contractor primarily through the Port of Los Angeles and assisting the Joint Powers Authority staff, and is well qualified to perform the remaining aspects of the draft EIR and completion of the document. They have entered into a one-year, $150,000 contract for the preparation of these services. As Mr. Cannon described, effective November 15th, the withdrawal agreement with the AQMD occurred, and since that time, Environ has stepped into that one-year agreement. This recommendation is for the governing board to approve the execution of a proposed amendment to the Environ agreement for an extension of the contract from 1 year to 3 years and increasing the maximum amount from $150,000 to $1,210,000. I would like to comment that these costs are all reimbursable by the project applicant, the Union Pacific Railroad. And as previously mentioned, this agreement with Environ includes subcontractors previously working on the project with the AQMD. We're also recommending that the board make the following finding: that this activity is administrative and will not result in a direct or indirect physical changes to the environment, and as such is not a project as defined by CEQA guidelines sections 15378.
Thank you, Mr. Thiessen. I actually have an issue I want to bring up with you on this specific contract. Is we know Environ is doing the other EIR for SCIG, and I want to make sure that this is a separate project. I want to make sure that, is there a way to make sure that this is kept separate? It comes out, because they're different projects. I don't want them looking alike. I don't want them, whatever, one spilling over into the other. I want to make sure they're two separate projects. I had that confidence with AQMD, that it would be two separate EIRs on two separate projects.
Yeah, yes, I think Mr. Cameron touched on this. Perhaps he could elaborate. The Environ as proposed, would be a consultant to the JPA staff, and as such, the JPA staff would ensure that the document preparation and all the subsequent activity would be held or separate from that other project, the SCIG project. But perhaps Rick or Chris Cannon can
Are you
discuss.
Mr. Chair or Mr. Vice Chair? When does the switch happen? Mr. Chair.
He's a chair.
Mr. Chair. I think there's two parts to that, two answers to that question. The first is, you are correct. They are two separate environmental documents looking at two individual projects. And so, yes, it is our responsibility as JPA staff to ensure that that happens and that there is not, those projects are kept separate and the analysis are. With that said, one of the reasons there are some joint analysis, for instance, the cumulative analysis.
Correct.
And so it's there will be some looking at what the SCIG project is doing in terms of that analysis and how we incorporate that into the cumulative analysis that we've agreed upon for this document. So it's not a straight, we can't just build a firewall and say yes. That's not true for, that's not true for any of our port projects, for instance. We have to look at, from a cumulative level, look at all the other projects going on around it. So yes, at the staff level, we will ensure that the adequacy of this document is done appropriately as a CEQA lead agency. But there is going to be some data usage from the SCIG project to complete this analysis for this project.
No, I understand the joint analysis in
Okay.
The cumulative effects and everything. But I just want to make sure that I won't call it firewall, but make sure that they're done as two separate documents.
Yes.
Because I think each project really needs to make sure it is kept separate and has its own merit, stands on its own merits. Okay.
Sure.
May I just add just the personal experience of having gone through the SCIG project and also obviously working on this one. There is a major difference between what happens in this project and what happens in the SCIG project, and it comes down to two words: Long Beach. The Port of Long Beach is quick to speak up and say what they think. But the gentleman to my right here has never been shy, and he, if he wants something, he makes it clear. And you see, there's just two of us here, so there's no majority rule or anything. We have to come to an agreement as to what is in the document. So policy issues, technical issues are resolved together. Of course, there is going to be some overlap and some consistency because there's similar facilities in similar area, but there are differences, and the differences are important, and the differences are discussed by the two ports, and decisions are made by the two ports, and there's no way that will change. There's no way Long Beach would let that happen, and to be very honest with you, we wouldn't have it any other way ourselves.
Good. Thank you. And I see Rick's not smiling, so
I was shaking my head, yes.
Thank you.
He was a little more articulate with his response.
Mr. Chair, I had one question. I appreciate the relationship to the prior item and this, and particularly the understanding of Environ's involvement in the process to date, which had already been a presence and is now not only continuing but changing slightly in terms of assuming the role of now assembling and helping to put this all together. I think I also heard indication that Environ will now be essentially responsible for the oversight, along with the staff, of all the subcontractors who had been working either with Environ or directly for AQMD, who will be carried on in and under this new contract. And I looked through the contract and couldn't find the list of subcontractors. So could I request that, again, a memo be sent to us and put on, I don't know, does our JPA have a website, or is it connected through either port, or perhaps should be, so that the public can get access to that same information now as to who the subcontractors are who will be continuing in the work that they have already provided to date, that you say is perhaps 90% done, as it is assembled and really the details in terms of the scrubbing of it is done. I would like to see that.
Yes, will do.
Madam Vice Chair, in Exhibit B of your agreement and the attachment, there are schedules of fees from the various subcontractors which identify the names of the firms that were carried over from the AQMD team. So it's not a specific list of subcontractors, but you can glean the names off of each page. We can provide that separate list for you.
And can I clarify something that Board Member Mizikowski said, because it came up at a previous meeting, the ability to download the actual documents, board reports, which happens for our own respective board meetings, but that came up at a previous meeting of this board. Does the public have the ability to download the actual items before the meeting?
No. They're on the website. It may, you have to click on the item. It may not be as easy or apparent for every person who goes on there, but you can go to the website
Okay,
tonight.
you see the agenda, you can click on the items, bring them up and then download them.
Yes,
Okay.
and you can print those out.
Right, print them, yes.
You can't click on the agenda.
Okay.
Yeah. It won't be on the agenda. You have to click on each of the individual items which are
Right,
were
exactly.
posted
Right,
separately.
yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, we should put it in the agenda.
Okay, in the future, we will have a easier link to bring up all the attachments.
Okay. Yeah, okay, yeah, we need to make it clear, because that
Yeah.
came up at a previous meeting, I think.
Okay.
It's not in the document library, and it's not in the meeting, where you go to the meeting and it gives you the agenda, and it's not in the document library, so I'm not sure where it will be. Go down low. It's under events.
Events.
Okay, if we could in the future just make sure it's much clearer
we'll have
exactly where it is.
An easier link or
Yeah.
a big bold heading that says, click here for all.
I know with the both ports, you just go to environment and tell us the exact document, you can pull it up.
Michelle can only find the agenda when she puts on events.
Well, we have staff here of the JPA, and perhaps one of the staff members could, Ryan, could you describe where it is on the website?
Carl found it.
Okay.
Under events, so
Okay.
it's there, I guess.
Yeah, probably it should probably be under meetings, not events,
Yeah,
which sounds like something
Make it
different.
clearer. Fix it. Just fix it. Okay, I got another question is we're talking about this thing being maybe 90% done already. Do we have an idea of the schedule?
Yes, I do.
Yeah, I was going to make that as part of the status on item number 10 if
Okay.
yeah, I can give you kind of a little bit better summary as a whole.
Okay, fine. Okay.
Mr. Chairman, before you vote on this, two comments. First, we have a couple of speakers who have requested to speak on item number 7. And then also, legal counsel has notified me there's a problem with the signature block on the last page. It should say Environ Corporation. We have another vendor's name on there. And we will fix that, assuming the board approves this item. It's on page number 2, we've identified the wrong vendor.
Okay. Yeah, you got the wrong. Okay. That'll be corrected, and that'll be part of our motion that'll be corrected. Okay, so first of all, before we have speakers, can I have a motion so we go further with this?
Motion to approve.
Okay, I have a motion second, and with the correction, the noted correction. Okay, can we go to the speakers, please?
The first speaker is Joan Greenwood.
Good evening. My name is Joan Greenwood. I'm a resident of the Wrigley District of Long Beach and have been following issues related to air quality in our area for well over 10 years. I mainly want to speak tonight because I want to share the concerns about having the same firm looking at both the SCIG and the ICTF rail yard projects. And my concern is that I am looking at the SCIG EIR now, and I find it somewhat lacking in good substantive scientific peer review and checking for technical and making sure that statements are properly referenced and the credentials of the people who prepare the reports are clearly stated, because there are serious flaws in the SCIG EIR. And I realize there's an administrative function here and a project management function that you're talking to, but I'm mainly concerned about the technical content. And I think this is an opportune time to open this up and let some other companies come in and have a chance to really go in and review this work, get it written up, and again, make sure, I mean, scientific peer review is fundamental to the methodologies that have been developed for EIRs over these past decades. And I find that it is being taken over more and more by attorneys and environmental planners. I'm finding that the science is coming up way short, and I would hate to see this one come up short on the science, especially as it relates to ultrafine particles. And that's my main concern, and the baseline. So I think you should look very seriously at whether or not you should take an opportunity at this point to bring in some expert peer reviewers with appropriate credentials from boards of certification for their professionals, such as the American Board of Toxicologists, and especially to be looking at this work. So I would, as I say, I'm very concerned because I think there's a little too much inbreeding in the EIR process compared to when we look at the regulatory process for hazardous materials. Thank you.